All right, welcome. This is Brandon Allen, the founder of the New Work Revolution. And I started New Work Revolution because I had this crazy notion that people should enjoy their time at work. And the best way to create enjoyment at work is by having great leadership who provides an environment and a culture where people can thrive. And that doesn't mean that things are always great and that everyone's always happy, but it does mean that a leader is doing their best to cultivate an authentic culture that not only serves their clientele, but also serves their team as well. So I wanted to talk with one of my clients about their experience in working with us and how that has transformed their leadership as well as their teams and their ability to produce value for their clientele. So today, all the way from Oregon, I have Dr. Nate Anderson. So Nate, just give us a little background on you and what you do for our listeners and our watchers.
I started a scratch dental practice about 10 years ago, and I wanted to be different than the trend I saw in dentistry specifically, and that trend is just more corporate, less patient-centered, and I found that model to be troublesome. I felt like the burnout rate was high, and I didn't want to do that, so I wanted to do something different. So I have a practice that's focused on patient relationship, high-level patient care, and we've been doing that for 10 years.
And you guys are not in the traditional insurance model, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we don't contract with any insurance companies, so we're what we call ourselves insurance independent.
Yeah.
We can provide the care that our patients want without interference.
I love that. I wanted to bring that up because I know a lot of dentists who have said they've wanted to do that, but they don't feel like it's possible. So here is Dr. Nate. For those of you who are wondering about this, it really is possible. So Nate, what got you into coaching in particular? Like, what was it that had you seek that out?
I knew I didn't have any training in school. There was just zero business leadership, no training at all. I knew it was a weak spot in my training. I knew if I wanted to do this at a high level, I needed help.
For you specifically, I know you've done a lot of dental specific training. What would you say is the biggest difference? Because I think I hear this a lot from people who are in a specialized industry. They have industry specific coaches that'll teach you how to bill, present treatments, flow of the office, all that kind of stuff. What's the difference between the kind of coaching that we do versus maybe that industry specific? Why do this type of coaching?
Oh, you kind of hit it on the head. I've done a ton of the industry specific stuff and it's good, but what it lacked is a higher level view of leadership. And I would say that the things that are industry specific, I can certainly apply in my practice, but the things I'm getting from your coaching tend to bleed into the rest of my life. It bleeds into my relationships outside of the office. It bleeds especially into my parenthood and the other relationships that are so involved in leadership and being a good leader.
Awesome. All right, good. So talking about just your biggest insight, and we've coached together off and on for several years. So we've known each other for quite some time. What has been the biggest insight that you've had through coaching with us?
I don't know if you're going to want to post this. Biggest insight as I've evaluated our coaching, it started off a lot about me ranting about my biggest issues with employees or marketing. And it has really evolved into, I need to do what I can for me to be a better leader in all of these spaces. So it's less about focused putting out of fires and more about developing the leadership style and culture that doesn't have fires.
Yeah,
so
I love that.
It's way more about me than everybody else. I like to believe in the past that it was everyone else's fault.
Yeah. So what has shifted? What do you think has been the biggest thing that's shifted for you to help you get to that place of putting out fires and looking to everyone else to get their act together versus you creating an environment where fires are less prevalent and that you're more of, the center and the focus for what happens?
The shift has been recognizing my role in leadership, and part of that role is allowing others the space to do their best. It's not micromanaging things, but training good people to do the things that they excel at and stepping back and being okay with what happens. Letting go of wanting to control every outcome and recognizing that there's lots of different good outcomes, not just the one I thought of. That's been the biggest shift.
Yeah, that's pretty hard because, Nate, if you don't mind me saying, I know that you're a recovering perfectionist. So it's hard to create that space, right?
Yeah, we first got to recognize the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nate is not the only one. There's a lot lot of leaders and owners of businesses that I work with who have challenges with letting go of control, with challenges of having perfectionism show up in every aspect of their life. And that then bleeds into a team. And if you're leading a team and you're a perfectionist, the problem is it's just never good enough, right? I always think of, I don't know why I always think about this too, but I'm a big music fan. So I always think of Prince and his song, When the Doves Cry, and maybe she's just like my mother. She's never satisfied. Like, I always think about that line when I think about perfectionism and control and leadership, because it's just never good enough. And what you notice, Nate, is that people get burned out by that, right?
Yeah, they get burned out as much as I do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's exhausting for you. It's exhausting for them. So kudos to you guys for doing something different that way. So in the coaching process, you've been really working on your own leadership. What have you noticed in terms of the environments that you lead? What's been different?
Boy, the difference has been, I kind of just talked about it. The biggest difference I've noticed is my acceptance of outcomes that I haven't had to curate. It hasn't had to be a specific outcome, more of a recognition of my role in helping others be their best instead of me helping others do exactly what I want them to do. And being excited about the best thing that they can do instead of having something go exactly the way I saw it in my head.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that. And I know I've been guilty of this, where I've had this idea where I think this idea is so good. And then by not giving people the space, or sometimes when I do give people the space, actually, I've noticed that people have better solutions sometimes than the one that I initially thought of. And so then I think, oh, I almost ruined that opportunity for that idea to happen by inserting myself where I didn't need to. So that takes a lot of practice, right? I'm sure that didn't just go away overnight.
No, years, unfortunately, years.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So thinking about outcomes, when we talk a lot about leadership, what comes out in this conversation a lot is talking about soft skills, things like the way we communicate with other people, the empathy we have for our team, caring about other people in leadership, recognizing our own gifts and strengths. What have been some of the more tangible benefits of you embracing more of that work for you? Because I think some people start to think about this and think, does this really matter? Does it make an impact on the outcomes that I'm trying to create through my business or in other areas?
Oh man, tangible. My business is a happier place to be. We're doing well financially, and I think that's also a part of this, and just giving people, instead of specific things to do and tasks to do, to get everyone focused on the same goal and saying, how do you want to get there? Let's talk about how to get there. And if you've got a great way to get there, awesome. And they're doing that. They're doing that at a really high level right now. But with that comes me not having to manage every little thing or solve every little problem, because we're looking at the same goal and we're all working for it. It's not like someone's dumping a fire on my desk every 20 minutes anymore. I can just say, hey, you know where we're going, so what would you do to get there? Just do that. And that's the culture shift that's happened that makes my day happier. I had an experience a while back where we have these monthly meetings where we all gather and talk about what we've done well and what we can do better. And a couple months ago, I didn't do a thing. I just sat there and watched them evaluate what we're doing, come up with a plan to do better. And it was phenomenal. I mean, talk about a high stress environment gone to zero. I just sat back and watched it, nodded my head and said, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do that.
Yeah.
That's the tangible stuff for me. I go home not as burnt out.
I love that. And I don't want to put words into your mouth, but is it simpler?
Oh, geez. Yeah.
And this is the point that I want to make. If you're looking at this and you're watching this and you're thinking, you know, our business is doing well, but it's complex. It requires a lot of my effort and energy, and I'm feeling a little burnt out. The thing with creating leverage, and Nate, you can speak to this here in a second, is that creating leverage, utilizing people to do their best work, it's hard up front because it requires us to change the way we communicate, more clear in the way that we articulate people's roles, holding people accountable. All those things up front, they're harder, right? So that's true that it is harder, but it makes our life easier later when we embrace those things. And a lot of times what we do is the opposite. We don't do the things up front that we should do, and that makes leading that team much more challenging. Has that been your experience, Nate?
Yeah, absolutely. I call it playing the long game.
Yeah.
I'm looking for things that are in place and are stable in years to come, not this week or not this month, but I want a solid platform for years.
Yeah.
And that it takes work and messes and trying hard things.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. So let's talk about personal life stuff. We've been talking recently about some personal life things. And one of the things in coaching, a lot of people still refer to me as a business coach because that's really how I got my start. In fact, I was a business consultant before I was a coach, and then have evolved into more of a, transformational leadership coach, which really means that not only do we talk about things inside the business, but we talk about things outside of the business. And I've talked to people about their relationship with their spouse, their relationship with their kids, their relationship to faith, their relationship to hobbies and exercise and all these different things. And so there's a well-roundedness that we want to talk about in leadership, because if we're not great in an area of our lives, it bleeds over into other areas. And so Nate, you recently had some insights about yourself through some work that we did. So talk to us a little bit about what that insight was and how that's kind of changed how you show up.
Well, I'm glad you brought this up.
I know Nate was super comfortable to talk about this, so I was like, is he going to leave this out? I wasn't going to let you.
It just kind of came about organically. I don't know how much you want me to say, but I'll just spill it and you can
go
chop
for it
up as needed. Man, a lot of what came up in a leadership aspect was this need, this perfectionism, this never being enough, and always falling short. And I guess that's okay if it's just on yourself and that's what's driving you to be better. As we dove into that, we realized, hey, I'm doing that same shit to other people and they're never enough. And that makes people feel pretty crummy. And when I'm working with people and living with people that are never enough, for me, man, that's just a shitty way to treat other people. In our world, it really came down to a lot of faith-based, supreme being stuff where I am enough. And in my world, that works. And it's not something I expected to get into, certainly business coaching, but that's where it took us. And that's what was needed for me to see a lot of these things that are happening in my life, and especially in my business.
Yeah.
And I thought it was great, by the way.
Good. I love that. So, and it really helped you uncover maybe talents and gifts that you were not even recognizing that you had.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. So I want to talk a little bit about workshops. You've been to our workshops. Talk to me a little bit about your workshop experience. What's that experience like coming to the workshops that we do?
I think workshops are great because it's full of people who are trying to get better, and the content is great. And what a lot of the value I get out of that is the relationships with other business owners, people trying to do things, trying to implement similar things that they've picked up in coaching, and figuring out where we're falling short, what other people might be trying that works well. Man, a lot of it also comes down to some camaraderie of being in the trenches with other people. There's a bond there that's instant when you're in the trenches trying to make something happen.
Absolutely. I think that experience, it's interesting about the workshops. I never really appreciated that until I started just reading people's feedback about the workshops, and person after person mentioned this whole thing about being in a space with other people who are in the same place that they are, trying to work through some of the same challenges, have some of the same goals. And as you know, in life, it's sometimes hard to find that in just your day-to-day life with the people that you maybe see on a day-to-day basis. That could be family, people at church, friends that you've known from school. It's hard to find that. And sometimes you can feel like an absolute weirdo as you're kind of working on these things, because people just don't get it, especially if you're a 9-to-5 kind of person. Like, you just don't really understand what that looks like. So it's nice to be around people who do.
I couldn't say that enough. We tend to feel so isolated, just so alone in our issues, and not always problems, just things we have to deal with. We feel so isolated. To get together with other people, man, it changes things. It opens up your brain.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those pathways are so important. And I think especially as men, not that women never do this either, but men, I feel like we have a tendency to isolate. We have a tendency to kind of put our heads down and just try to rugged individual, let's forge this path on our own, and that can be a really lonely existence if we're not careful.
Yeah.
All right. So Nate, any final thoughts? Anything else that's coming up for you about coaching, your experience with coaching with me that you want everyone to know about as we wrap this up today?
Coaching has been phenomenal for my marriage. And I don't know if you want to even use any of this, but the way I've been able to bring my concerns to you instead of a spouse, where I have someone who can give me insight and solutions and things to work on instead of my wife who might read that as just complaining about the hard things at work. That's hard after years on a marriage. It's hard to have that person receive all of that baggage, but to have someone who can give me something to do about it, to dissect it and say, okay, what are the pieces we can work with here? What can we do to change this? What do we have control over? And actually work towards a change. Not only does it offload that mess from our relationship, but it gives me something to change. So there's less of that to talk about. I end up going home and talking about wins and successes. And I think you've probably taught me that, to not forget to talk about the good things and celebrate the things that happen. That's transformed our relationship as it relates to business, which is such a huge part of our life, being a business owner.
Yeah, that's such a byproduct of what we talked about earlier. When it's never enough for us, why would we ever celebrate?
Yeah,
we wouldn't. And I've caught myself being this way. I've worked with a lot of leaders who they're always on to the next thing because they always think, well, I did this thing, but I could do more of this thing, or I could do this thing at a bigger level. And so they get stuck in that pursuit of the next thing. And I think what keeps us from getting off that treadmill is that there's a level of success that comes from that, even if that success is miserable.
Yes.
There's success that comes along with that, we're like, hey, we're moving the needle on the scoreboard. I'm unhappy, but I'm winning in this area. And so we keep doing it.
Absolutely. Spot on.
Yeah. So I love that you're able to share those wins with the people around you, because they need to see that too. So they don't think that, yeah, my dad had a business, but man, he was such an insufferable asshole the whole time. I just hope that it went out of business at some point so we would just stop, right? And I know kids like that. I mean, I remember I had a friend growing up that, he used to talk like that. He was just like, man, there's nothing I hate more than my dad's business. And because he brought that stuff home and it was really negative. And as a parent, we want our kids to see what's good about what we do. And sometimes that's hard when our mindset's not good about it.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. I mean, I can think of last week going home and sharing with my kids, hey, we did this smile makeover case. This person felt fantastic. They didn't know how to smile. They're ecstatic about life now. Sharing things that matter about changing someone's life instead of, oh boy, well, quarter 3 is not as solid as we'd like it to be. Just dumb shit like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I remember in Alice in Wonderland, there's this quote that I'll roughly paraphrase. I think this is fairly accurate to what the quote is, but it says, the problem with the world is everyone wants a magical solution to their problems, but everyone refuses to believe in magic. And it's so easy for us as business owners to stop believing in the magic of what we do and start to treat it as just some kind of routine, like, it's just this thing. Yeah, I did dental work today, and it's more than that.
Yeah, totally agree.
All right. Anything else that you want to share before we wrap up here?
I appreciate you. And there's things that come up in coaching that I really appreciate. And that's when you share your failures. And you haven't been a guy that's like, look, I've got everything figured out if you just listen to me. Where it's been really impactful for me is when you say, you know what, I've been there. I've had that. I've been through that relationship trouble. I've been through that cycle. It sucks. Let me show you some things that, that may have changed how I was doing in that situation. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you, Nate. I appreciate it. So thank you, Nate. I know you're a busy guy, so I appreciate you taking some time and doing this today. I really do.
Happy to do it anytime. Thanks, Brandon.
All right. So here's the deal. We talked about a lot of things here, but if you're a leader and you run a business in particular and you're looking for just a different pathway, you're doing some good things, but the things that you're doing aren't quite bringing the joy and the fulfillment, the satisfaction that you want. Maybe there's some things about yourself that you're not quite sure about. Maybe there's some challenges with relationships that exist for you. There's a lot of different things that creating the space to talk about these things can really help you to discover some different ways of moving forward for yourself that are going to serve you and your goals in the direction that you want to go in better. And that's really what we try to do in the coaching space. It's really not about having the answers as much as it is, let's ask the right questions in order for you to figure out what it is about this situation that you want to change and address moving forward for yourself. So this is Nate's story. That's one of many stories that we deliver at New Work Revolution. And that's really what we want to do. We want people to leave that experience feeling empowered, feeling like, hey, I've got some tools to really move in a more efficient and effective way towards the goals and the hopes and the dreams that I have as an individual. So again, Nate, thank you so much for doing this with us today. And for those of you who are watching this, hey, check us out at newworkrevolution.com. If you want more information, there's a lot of stuff there for you to check out. And I would love to talk with you. So anyone who wants to engage in, hey, what does this look like? I would be happy to jump on a phone call with you. And here's the thing that you'll notice about the way that we do phone calls in terms of enrollment and coaching. We do not do sales calls. I know that sounds really weird. We do coaching calls. So if you get on the phone with me, guess what you're going to get? You're going to get coaching, and you're going to get coaching for free. And then through that coaching process, we may decide that we want to have a relationship beyond that call, and we can talk more about that. So it's very low pressure, very high value for you. So if you've been looking at this, you've been thinking about it, check us out, hit me up. I would love to talk to you and see what's next for you as well. So we'll talk to you guys again soon on the next testimonial video that we do. But for now, you guys have a great rest of your day with whatever you're doing, and we'll talk again soon.